Well, good morning and welcome to this new date of the Sustainable Bus Tour 2024. And first of all, thanks to European Mobility Expo for hosting this session today. It's quite an honor and a burden to inaugurate, let's say, this morning of the second day of the exhibition, but it's for sure more an honor than a burden, okay? And my name is Riccardo Schiavo. I'm from a Sustainable Bus media platform. We were launched in 2018 with the focus of focusing on developments and innovation in the public transport and mobility sector. Since a few years, we are promoting some webinars and then conferences under the name of Sustainable Bus Tour, which is the initiative this session today belong. In just a few years, it's something we all know here, Europe will only allow zero-emission buses to be sold in the city bus segment. So it sounds like a really good achievement, but it's quite filled with challenges, and these challenges and how to get there, the topic of today's session. So many questions arise, so on business model, on the capacity of OEM to scale up the production, on how, TCO parity has been reached, will be reached for zero-emission vehicles compared to conventional vehicles. And I'm quite glad to have here a really nice panel of people from the European Commission, from the Global Organization of Public Transport, UITP, from two leading operators such as Keolis and Transdev, and from industry players such as Iveco, Irizar, and ZF. So as you mentioned before, are you hearing me well? Can you confirm that in the bottom? Okay, good. I will start with the why getting there. So we will focus on the how later on during the panel. Starting with the why, I'm quite glad to call on stage Mr. Dario Dubolino, which is a policy officer at the European Commission's Directorate General for Mobility and Transport, the DG Move. With you, the microphone is over there. I'd like to ask you which is the role, the position buses and public transport has in the European roadmap, with focus on a series of topics such as subsidies, market, and competitivity, of course. Please.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to this really interesting expo and event. So I'll give a brief introduction on the broad policy framework in which we see the switch towards zero-emission buses between now and 2035. And I should start by saying, of course, we need to start by recognizing the role of public transport. And a key question, of course, is, well, even a diesel bus is much better than the 50, 60, 70 cars it replaces. That is absolutely clear. However, when we look at the Green Deal and our decarbonization approach and objectives for 2050, there is no scenario where we reach our overall climate objectives without a 90% reduction of all transport emissions, including all modes. So this means that even modes like public transport that are already among the best we have need to go towards zero emission. Now, if you will allow me a bit of a historical perspective here, we have now the CO2 emission performance standards for HTVs that set these targets 90% in 2030 and 100% in 2035. But this is not the beginning of this trajectory. This started actually with the Clean Vehicles Directive back in 2019, which set targets not for the manufacturers, but for public procurement. And of course, for urban buses, public procurement is 70% of the market. So if you shift public procurement, you are really changing the whole market. And the Clean Vehicles Directive set targets at the member state level for the public procurement of clean buses and sub-targets for zero-emission buses. So this is where we first set targets. And the targets go up to 2030. And now, as of 2030, we will have the CO2 emission performance standards. So you can see this as a trajectory. Now, when we look at the Clean Vehicles Directive, back in 2019, and this was before the Green Deal, this was a different world in a way. But the targets for zero-emission buses for this first period until 2025 go up to 22.5% for the member states with the highest targets. Other member states have lower ones. And I think it's important to recognize how much progress the sector has done already, because when you look at new registration this year, 2024, we're already above that across the EU. Roughly every third new bus registered in the EU this year was electric. And we have some hydrogen buses as well as part of the fleet, and we expect them to play a bigger role over time. So we are already going in this direction, and the CO2 emission performance standards set targets for the manufacturers and will ensure that we complete this switch towards zero emission. So this is the overall policy framework and trajectory. Now, is it easy to get there? Probably not. We shouldn't underestimate the challenges. What we see primarily is we need to have at the city level the expertise, the knowledge about these new technologies, and we need to plan carefully, especially when it comes to the recharging and refueling infrastructure. I should say, when we adopted the Clean Vehicles Directive, we were not leading but following, really, in the sense that when you look at cities like Amsterdam, Milan, Paris, they had already set themselves targets that went beyond what we put in the Clean Vehicles Directive. Now, the question is, how do we get the whole EU to go in this direction? And that's what we try to do with legislation. We've also had, over the past few years, a project that we supported, led by UITP, called Clean Bus Euro Platform, when we helped exchange experience and know-how between these leading cities that had already started implementing bus lines with zero-emission buses and the ones that had to follow. And key messages we heard are, you need to plan the transition properly. It's not a one-to-one with a bus. You need to plan the whole system, and especially it's crucial to plan your recharging infrastructure if you're looking at electric buses properly. This will be, in our view, the main challenge in the coming years, in the sense that especially for medium, larger bus fleets, when you go look at depot charging, you will mostly need connection to the medium and high voltage grid if you have a large enough fleet. And this needs time. So the key message I would say is this needs to be planned accordingly, and we need to really start with that. We are offering support from a financial perspective with the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Facility, where we finance recharging and refueling infrastructure for buses. But broadly speaking, this would be one of the main challenges in terms of timing, especially when you look at 2030 and 2035, where first 90% and then 100% of buses will have to be zero emission. Again, we are aware of that, and we are putting financing, making financing available, but also we'll be working with colleagues dealing with the electricity grid to help make it easier to ensure that we have the appropriate electricity grid, and that it's easier and it's less time-consuming to get additional connections to the grid for bus depot, for recharging points along the route, etc. So this would be, from our perspective, the key challenges we see. From a technology perspective, I think, well, the speakers and the panelists will be able to say more, of course, but what we've heard so far from cities that have switched to electric buses is that the experience is positive. The TCO is already, in many cases, competitive with diesel. Of course, we have a challenge with the initial capex being higher, but broadly speaking, these are challenges that can be addressed. The main one, from our point of view, going forward, will be, from our side, facilitating the infrastructure from the buses. Here also we have in the Alternative Fuel Infrastructure Regulation, that's about publicly accessible infrastructure, but it requires member states to plan and report on how they will facilitate the deployment of recharging infrastructure for buses. So we are mobilizing the national level, we are putting funding available at the European level, and broadly speaking, we will do our best to support this transition. This, I would say, is the main overview, and I guess there will be questions and comments later.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the presentation, and thanks for staying here, as I guess many topics, many answers. Maybe we'll ask for your contribution again later on. Following it, we stay in the institutional area. Let's say we keep the foot in the institutional area. Calling here Mr. Thomas Avanzata, so the spokesman of the European Committee at the Global Organization of Public Transport, UITP, who will be highlighting which are the key messages of the organization to the European institution. Give me a while to change the slides.
Good morning, everybody. So I have a short presentation on UITP's key messages to the EU institutions. As you may know, UITP represents the interests of its European members, authorities, and operators towards the European institutions. So this means that we have a voice on all legislative dossiers, including, of course, the dossiers related to the transition, the energy transition, and the transition towards zero emission. The Clean Vehicle Directive, of course, the CO2 emission standards are crucial dossiers. But this morning, I would like to replace the discussion, the technical and specific discussion you're going to have, to replace this discussion on transition to zero emission in the frame of the key messages of UITP. What are these key messages we try to deliver to the European institutions? Of course, we will go to the new Commission, we go to the new TRAN committee, the new MEPs, part of the Transport Committee in the European Parliament, with a main message. Of course, we will deliver a specific message on each and every legislation that is impacting us, but we have general messages. And this morning I have 4 or 5 minutes, so I will stick to 2 main messages. The first message is the message related to the benefits of public transport. Every time we have to prove hardly any other sector delivers as many benefits, as many positive externalities, as we say in Brussels, as local public transport. So we all know these benefits. They're related, of course, to fighting climate change, to clean air, to noise reduction. They're related to road safety. They're related to jobs. They're related to boosting the economy, to social cohesion, to territorial cohesion. But I can tell you that each and every time we have a meeting with the European institutions, we have to demonstrate that local public transport delivers these benefits. And our sector delivers these benefits not 1 or 2 times a year when the happy few are taking long-distance rail or planes. We deliver this every morning, every afternoon, every evening, when you go to the movie, when you go to the work, when you bring kids to school. So in European citizens' everyday life. So this is our first message, and it may be obvious for us, but I can tell you it's not that obvious. So the first message is about the public transport benefits. The second message is about the difficult, and you see the dangerous penguin, the penguin in a dangerous situation, is the situation, the economical situation and the difficult balance that our sector is currently facing with a changing cost structure, with different factors. We all know these factors: exploding energy prices, of course, the crucial problem, and it's a problem everywhere in Europe, of staff shortage and difficulties to recruit. The investments related to digitalization, ticketing systems, mobility as a service apps, information, etc. And the investment wall, do we say a wall in English? Le mur d'investissement that our sector is facing concerning decarbonization costs for new vehicle and their infrastructure, for the training, for the recruitment that are in front of us, 2030, 2035. This is really tomorrow, and especially the CO2 emission standards has really accelerated this timeline. So we have in front of us this changing cost structure, and the second part of the changing cost structure and the second element of this unbalanced situation is, next slide please, is the declining of revenues. So we have exploding costs and revenues that are, in the best case scenario, stagnating, okay? Of course, you all know here again the factors, the new normal following the COVID crisis, the working from home that we are still trying to, of which we are still trying to assess the consequences, the pressure on fares, and the flat rate tendency. So declining revenues, exploding costs, this is the situation we're in. So next slide, so this explains a little bit why the penguin is not so happy. And what we're trying to, the message we're trying to convey is we need Europe to help us finding a new balance, and this is the next and maybe last slide. Of course, we need increased fundings and simplified access to finances. And there again, we have a very intense discussions in front of us at the European level. And I think we have here all a collective responsibility to spread this message, because at any level, we have to come with the same type of message. So the importance of the future multi-annual financial framework, model shift. We need to have this objective of shifting to collective transport, to sustainable public transport as a European objective. And this is not always that clear, that a modal shift should be a European objective. What we ask from European institutions is that they make high quality local public transport a symbol, a real symbol of a modern Europe and a symbol of European competitiveness. So this is our message, and we've asked many times for a declaration on local public transport, not a declaration on aviation, not a declaration on cycling as was adopted recently, a declaration on local public transport, the transport we take every day. And of course, we want, if possible, that the legal framework is coherent, avoiding legislation that are limiting the impact of a previous one or contradicting impact. So we want really an assessment of all legislative initiatives to see whether they benefit or not to our sector. This is it for me. So only 5 minutes to remind these two messages of UITP. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Also quite nice to see public transport operator and stakeholders assimilated to penguins, which are, of course, in a troubling situation due to what we have seen, but also in danger for the climate change and rising water levels and so on. But I mean, we all know that public transport is also among the solutions, the potential solution to that, and so the penguin is quite appropriate. I'm calling here Jose Serrano from RaboResearch. So we step in a place where we are hearing some numbers, okay? RaboResearch is making some studies recently on public transport, on the evolution of the zero-emission bus market. So thank you, Jose, for showing us some outlooks.
Well, thank you very much, Ricardo, for the introduction. And well, just briefly to say, RaboBank shifted its strategy about 4 years ago. They decided they want to be a big player in the energy transition, and this year, the first half, we ranked the number 3 in the global financing institutions that are present in the energy transition. So it's a very important market for us. And my job in the last year has been to look at the European city bus markets. And quite frankly, we see a very positive outlook for electricity, as we can show here on the next slide. Last year's storyline has to be that by 2023, battery electric vehicles in city buses became the most popular option. They went over diesel by 2,000 vehicles in registration, and we also saw an increase in the plug-in hybrids of electric city buses. However, not at the stage that they were in 2021. So it's an interesting technology as well, but think battery electric the stage here. Of course, this change has been pushed by European regulation, as we saw in the presentation just recently. But also, I think it's no minor feat to say that European cities are also quite bullish on the transition. And for example, setting zero-emission zones in city centers is one of the major incentives to switch to zero-emission. But on the next slide, I want to look a little bit how the market is going to look in 2030. And so in the last 4 years, we saw a staggering growth. If you do the average, you get about 38% average compounded growth rate. But 2023 was spectacular. We saw 44% growth rate, increased growth rate compared to 2022. And so we see quite a strong market going ahead. Now, if we say, okay, we need about 90% sales, zero emissions registrations by 2030, what target should get us to that level? And we estimate with a 15% growth rate on sales, we'll be able to reach 2030. Now, I just said we had a 38% growth rate in the last 4 years. So I think it's quite conservative to assume that the market is going to increase by 15%. And that gives us quite a lot of confidence that we're going to reach 2030 targets. Now, the penetration rate for battery electric city buses has not been homogeneous across the European Union, and we see some clear, let's say, front runners. And if you see the countries that are here on the left side, they're ordered by highest penetration in the market to lowest. We see that Luxembourg, Denmark, Netherlands are countries that have high penetration rates. This has several factors, one of them being that they're quite rich countries, and as our colleague previously said, this is a change of structure from an operative expenses to a CapEx structure for the market. So it makes sense that they have, let's say, the capacity to switch. But also, let's not underplay the fact that they're smaller fleets. So this, of course, inflates a little bit the penetration rate when you buy 90 electric city buses. Now, the market has been evolving gives us quite a lot of confidence, the evolution of the market. At the beginning of 2015, we saw a lot of startups in the market with some established players. However, in 2023, we saw that all of the established OEMs are now producing electric city buses, and that gives us confidence that since the manufacturers are already pushing strong in this technology, that the future of the market is going to be electric. However, there's a key technology that it really drives the market, of course, and that, of course, is batteries. And what you can see here is the evolution of the price of battery packs on average. And what we saw is that in 2010, of course, you had hugely expensive batteries, but it's been developing to an exponential level, right? So it's been decreasing quite fast. And now in 2023, we got reports coming from China that you see prices almost to the level of $50 per kilowatt hour. Of course, this being LFP and not NMC, you also have to make the distinction. The battery chemistry makes a lot of difference in the price. But with those battery prices, I think using electricity in city buses is quite doable. But however, when I show the previous graph to a room full of bankers and they read a lot of the Financial Times, so everyone tells me yes, but there's a lot of overcapacity in the Chinese market, and you see that they're pushing prices down. And then I show this graph, which is a lot less sexy than the one before, but I think it tells a story more powerful. And that is that the energy density of batteries has been consistently improving in the last 14 years. In 2010, you had almost 90 watts per kilogram in battery packs for energy density, and nowadays we're seeing almost 200 watts per kilogram. That 4% consistent growth rate in the energy improvement of batteries is one of the main reasons why I think the battery electric technology is anchored to the market, and we're not going to see a reversal. And let me just finish with this slide here, and that is that in the last, let's say, 5 years, we've seen a strong decline in the presence of European manufacturers in the market, right? So in 2017, almost 80% of the market was being taken by European manufacturers, and the UK surprisingly, Turkey as well sort of woke up in 2019, and they started to increase their market share. But I want to give your attention to the middle line, China there, which is not increasing as heavily, but we think that in the future is a market to look for, and that is because of two reasons. One, I think everyone knows, and all of the supply chain is located in China for batteries, so they have quite a strong competitive edge there. But also, it's a matter of currency exchange. The last year, we saw 12% depreciation of the renminbi, the Chinese currency, with respect to the euro, and that puts a flat 12% discount for anyone buying things from China with euros, of course. And that is just quite a worrying, let's say, trend to see. So let me just finish with two messages. The first one is that, don't mind the slides, the first one is that by 2030, you're going to see 13,500 electric city buses being sold every year. Like I said, the technology is there. The market has developed enough that now there's still a place for regulation, but the technology is getting the market there. And the second and more provocative, perhaps, statement is that if we continue to see this decrease in the cost of the technology by 2030, it's most likely that battery electric city buses is going to be on par with diesel in capital expenditure. And with this, I want to finish my...
Thanks, Jose. You raised some quite interesting topics. Thanks for being very effective. 5 minutes, a lot of figures, a lot of outlooks, and a lot of materials to debate in the upcoming roundtable. The slides of market output and manufacturing balances was quite strong, and of course will be a topic of discussion now. I'm now inviting on the stage panelists for the roundtable, starting from Cathy Black, Energy Transition Director at Keolis, Bruno Lapéry, Group Director, Center of Excellence, Energy Transition Bus in Keolis, Jean-Marc Boucheret, Sustainable Mobility Manager at Iveco Bus, José Antonio Sola, Global Sales Director, Irizar e-Mobility, René Schneider, Segment Leader, Commercial Vehicles, Platform e-Mobility, ZF Group, and Jan-Erik Starlander, Head of Relations with Territories and Local Authorities, France Hydrogène. Now I breathe a little bit, and we could start. I would start from Transdev, which is a company quite known with activities all over the world. What it could be interesting for us to get a glimpse about, how could you move some lessons learned in other markets in Europe? Of course, Latin America transit system cannot be compared with the European ones. A lot of difference in regulation and in support and all this stuff. But how could you take something from there, Latin America or other regions, and put it into Europe in terms of operation and business model, maybe? Please.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Katie Black. I'm the Energy Transition Director at Transdev. So just a tiny bit of context. Transdev has a large global business across 19 countries and many modes of transport. So yes, lots of buses, but also rail, ferries, taxis, and we're seeing some of those start to electrify as well. So our journey for electric buses started in 2015 in the Netherlands, and then in 2019 we created a central hub at our headquarters in Paris to promote the ambitious approaches and knowledge sharing across the group. So today we've got zero emission operations across 13 different countries, and we've got several fleets of several hundred electric buses alongside many mixed fleets. So as Ricardo said, there's a really interesting question for us on how do we transfer those lessons from our very large fleets in places like Bogota, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Santiago in Chile. How do we take what we're learning from those 100% electrified operations and transfer them to fleets which might be just starting to electrify or going on a more gradual process? So I wanted to pick out a couple of lessons and things that we've learned. So the first is, we've talked already about cost, but thinking really hard about how we can keep costs down for our clients, and through proposals that have, intelligent design decisions and procurement decisions. I think one of the biggest things that everybody has learned is that electric buses might be a more simple vehicle in terms of maintaining it, but the operations are definitely more complex. And it's really vital, especially once you start having a significant part of the fleet that is electrified, that we're able to follow that fleet in real time. particularly things like the state of charge in a battery. Does it have enough charge to complete its day's work? And so in the Netherlands, for example, we've created a system that enables us to follow the state of charge of our battery in real time and anticipate any issues that might arrive later in the day. All of that is nothing if we can't access the data to feed those real-time systems, and that means working with our partners like Iveco and making sure that we've got access to all the data that we need from the vehicles and the chargers to be able to then analyze and act on that information. And then the last is really learning from all the different contexts and places that we're operating. So we've learnt lots, for example, from trying to make electric buses work in the north of Sweden, where it's extremely cold in the winter, and contrasting that experience with, for example, the electric buses we have in Las Vegas, which is basically a desert climate, means that we are learning every day about the different challenges associated with different environments and how we can use all that knowledge to benefit all of the public transport authorities that we work with. So that's a very quick overview. I could talk about 3 hours for that subject, but that's a start.
Thanks for your effort. Okay, let's get a little bit on the business model topic with the Keolis, Bruno Laperi. So we have these two targets, 2030, 2035, 90% and 100% of zero emission bus sales being zero emission. Technology is changing. How do you see also the business model, the need for change of the business model of public transport? Any disruptions, let's say, in view?
Thank you, Riccardo. Yeah, just I wanted to say I'm so happy to be a penguin. Thank you for the image. Not only because penguin is lovely, is sometimes funny, but absolutely committed to fight against climate change. And with a very high level of resilience, I think this is the signature of operators who can say together. Thank you very much for the image. Very fine. Yeah, the business model. This is the key question, of course, regarding zero emission vehicles. So despite what you said, I mean, I'm sorry to say that in real life, and we can say probably that real life is operation and maintenance. It's not selling vehicles. It's not consulting business. Real life is operation and maintenance. And in real life, TCO of electric vehicle is still higher, much higher than diesel one. I'm sorry to say that. This is real life. Around plus 20, plus 25%, talking about TCO. This is the first character of ZEV compared to diesel regarding the business model. The second one, this is that the balance between CapEx and OpEx is the contrary. And there are many consequences because of that. The first one is that you need more finance, more money to finance the investment. The more you run an electric vehicle, the cheaper it becomes compared to diesel, and so on, and so on, and so on. And there are, if you consider that the baseline is mainly roughly 20% more expensive for electric than for diesel, the good news is that there are many levers to try to optimize the business model. The first one, and probably the most powerful, is that if you just increase the life of the asset of 5 years, you save more than 15% on the TCO because the CapEx is higher. And probably this will be my first key message for my colleagues OEMs.
So plus 5 years, so
yeah,
TCO
plus
less 15% on diesel or compared to the actual TCO?
Compared to diesel.
Okay.
Okay. It's a very, very powerful lever. And this is really a message I want to share today. Please, my friends, manufacturers, please, on behalf not only of PTOs, but as well of PTS and public money in Europe, please deliver more robust vehicles than the ones are not built in Europe. Please. This is a good message for you as well, probably. This is the most efficient way to make the TCO of electric comparable to diesel. By far, by far. The second lever is related to the battery, because as you know, the battery is 1/3 of the value of the vehicle. And more than that, considering all the lifespan of the vehicle, you have to change the battery once time during the life. So this is 2/3 of the value of the vehicle. Please be more aggressive on the warranty condition and on the asset management, globally speaking, on the battery. Now we start to have offers coming from manufacturers that can save not far from 15% as well on the TCO of the vehicle compared to diesel. This is the second lever, the battery, and the battery, and focus on that. You still today, you still keep too much value on the risk of the battery. You don't share it enough with operators and PTAs. And if you keep on like this, probably you will lose the market. Two key messages for starting, yeah. Lifespan of the vehicle, more robust, and the battery.
Okay, moving to Iveco Bus, I'd say part of your answer will be, of course, to taking up the messages of Bruno Lapéry from Keolis. And in addition to that, I mean, Iveco Bus, it's one of the OEM which is taking up on the challenge of building e-buses in Europe. Okay, we just launched also assembly and manufacturing in Annonay, besides the historical one in Rote. So, which are the enabling conditions for European OEM to be up on this challenge, and how could you share or not share, which was said before?
Well, thank you, Ricardo, for the introduction, and Bruno for the challenging job for us to complete. Nevertheless, as a manufacturer, we are deeply involved into investments. Speaking here in front of an important French PTA crowd, we explained earlier in spring that we are investing over 100 million euros in France for covering the transformation in innovation, R&D, manufacturing, and this is including as well the Euro 7, because it's also there for the coaches. We are monitoring the market just like you shared in terms of growth. But this is not to forget that this is the consequences of the mechanism that were adopted when exiting the COVID. When back in 21, there was the facility which allowed several member states to get special access to fundings. So what we see now in 2023 and 2024 is a result of all the tenders which were passed in the years of 22. And unfortunately, we say that this is not consistent. We have several signals, like we are monitoring the levels and the quantities of electric bus tenders. So the trend is now dropping down. We detect on a 12 months rolling basis, basically a drop of 25% of this volume. So in real life, we see that despite the fact that we've got good order book, what happens from 26, 27 onwards when the facility mechanism is over? This is, in fact, the clear message that we are setting to the new parliament and obviously to the commission, to the decisions they're going to make in terms of budget that is assigned for the continuation, because we should pull the stick, if I would use this aviation example, that more vehicles needs to be placed in the market. We are ready from the industrial point of view. Let's say that the bus is becoming a commodity. Now what we need to look at is not to count the buses, but to count the numbers of depots which are converted. Obviously, again, speaking in France, we are delivering to 20 different new depots that have been converted to electricity since this transition has been made. I just want to put in the same figure for the CNG vehicles, where we are delivering to 50 depots which have been converted to CNG, since basically also the CVD was also a neutral tool to promote low carbon solutions, having both electricity or hydrogen or CNG with biomethane to be elected. So this dynamic is somehow disturbed with the CO2 standards that recognize only tailpipe emissions for these targets. So basically, when I was listening also yesterday during the opening conference, there was also explained by GART and UTP that they were requiring that stronger tools needs to be put in place. The CEF needs to be stronger. The ETS needs to bring money going directly to public transport, not to mention the other topics that, for instance, the EIB was often used for big metropoles to purchase and to transform their assets. But this is a tool which is too big. I mean, the threshold that is used for the EIB is too high to target the smaller PTAs that today have not even started to do that. And the small PTAs, they don't have the knowledge that larger ones already have in terms of electromobility with metro or light rail. So we've got a totally new challenge coming in front of us, is potentially to do the second part of the large metropoles, and potentially the second part of the depots might be the most complicated to transform and to attack, I would say, the small metropoles that are that haven't done anything yet with this respect. So under these unclear conditions, manufacturers under the umbrella of ACEA are clearly raising the red flag today, saying we don't deny the ambition that is set to us, but we are looking quite fairly at the enabling conditions, which are not there, and we are asking just right now to anticipate in 2025 the revision of the CO2 standards that is for HGV set in 2025. 2027 to anticipate now and have a fair discussion with the Parliament together with the Council and the Commission. It's really the moment of truth.
Okay, thank you. I think there will be time later for having maybe Mr. Dubolino having another comment on this. I leave also another question just for the second round, or maybe for who will be willing to take it. I was talking recently with a large OEM, a bus seller, and they said, we don't need, it was a provocation but honest, being frankly speaking, we don't need any more subsidies for buses, just put subsidies on infrastructure. Because if infrastructure will be in place, then we will also benefit of it, even if subsidy for us will be less strong. I leave it here. Maybe somebody take it up and comment on this. José Antonio Sola from Irizar Mobility, which is kind of a startup within the Irizar group with a clear focus on e-mobility. I would ask you, how do you see the European markets developing, the European areas developing, which is, as we already heard, Europe is made of a very different market, very different fundings mechanisms. So how do you see the European market developing? Which are your company's strategy depending on the regions then?
Buenos días, good morning. Thank you, Ricardo. It's a pleasure to be here at this talk. First of all, for the audience to understand who we are, perhaps let me give you a couple of words about Irizar Mobility. We are the daughter, 100% daughter of Irizar, who is a traditional manufacturer of coaches, who never before did city urban buses at all. So they set up this company, the company I'm speaking now on behalf of, where our main activity and only activity is to design, produce, and deliver urban electric buses. Okay, so we are like a newcomer, like a startup, and we have like 10 years history. In these years, we are celebrating now the delivery of our electric bus number 1000, which is a very important milestone for us. And we are present in 14 countries already in Europe, which is our natural market. So For us, from the Irizar e-mobility point of view, because I'm going to speak to you on behalf of Irizar e-mobility, so we see the market tough, difficult. So first of all, this industry is very competitive, as we know. From one side, the price of our vehicles, of our buses, is expected to decrease on a continuous basis. On the other side, we have suppliers that are by far many times larger than us, with whom it's very difficult to negotiate in pricing or have a power of decision in pricing. So this puts us in a very difficult situation in which we need to be internally very, very effective. So within these suppliers, as this talk has been spoken already, one of the key players are the battery makers. So they are, most of them placed in Asia, and they are big companies as well, huge companies as well. And well, they not only control the price of the batteries themselves, they now, and this is worrying us, they are also controlling the production of lithium, which is the chemistry, the element on which our current batteries are based off. So it seems that from that side, that, I don't know, 30% of the cost of the buses that we were mentioning before is in hands of these huge makers that they want to control that this profit stays there. So this is becoming difficult. How do we do this? Well, the group, Irizar Group, what has made in the last years is to create or grow up organically by acquiring companies who are suppliers of the key elements that we have in our buses, such as, in our case, HVAC, doors, ramps, and also, as complement, the chargers. So in this way, we try to control the supply chain in our hands as much as possible. Then what we have done at Irizar e-mobilities in terms of batteries is to build the batteries ourselves. So we are a manufacturer of batteries in certain way as well. So we buy the cells from these makers that we have spoken before, and from that point on, we build all the batteries. And what we try with this is to mitigate that impact on cost, but mainly as well to have the knowledge and the control of the working of the batteries themselves, so that we can optimize our buses on a continuous basis. So regarding the strategy or the plans for 2035, yes, we expect, although the figures, I agree with you from that the figures are declining now in the purchase of electric buses. This year, we believe that the registrations will be above 7,000 units, 7,300 units or something like that could be, which is more than last year's as well. But it's true that, okay, fundings are important. European fundings are important to stimulate the PTAs and the PTOs to continue betting on this challenge, but there is an alternative is also required. So in case that these funds fail for any reason, it's important that the private financing also takes an important role in this part to stimulate the market as well. So we've seen the case of Germany, where the federal funding has dropped down, and now the operators there, for every 100 buses they intended to buy, now they are saying they are going to buy only 40, which is really dramatic. And well, and then on the other hand, it would be also, I don't know, it could make sense that these European funds go to European operators who use European buses. That would be also something to think about.
Okay, thank you. We have also a figure, so forecast of 7,000 zero-emission buses to be registered this year. It was 6,000 last year, so okay. Thanks for this. We will be up later on what we see as a kind of slowdown in tendering the first half of this year, because we are all seeing it like Iveco Bus, Jean-Marc Boucheret said before. Jan-Erik Starlander, the French Hydrogène Association, very straight to the point. I'd like to ask you, we will take very good notes about it, which are the market share you expect for fuel cell buses, and maybe more interesting also coaches or intercity vehicles by 2030 in Europe, please.
Thank you, Ricardo. Yeah, so just to remind that to reach zero emission, there are mainly two technologies, the electric battery vehicles and hydrogen. That the two technologies are complementary because fuel cell buses are electric buses. In some cases, it's also a combination of both technologies with a range extender. Fuel cell buses are newer on the market, where there is now an acceleration. We track the number of buses, fuel cell buses that are being ordered by public transport authorities all over Europe. For example, in France, already today there are only 60 buses operating, but we track that by 2027 there should be around 10 times more buses circulating, twice as much in Germany, so there's clearly an acceleration. So by 2035, probably electric battery buses will be predominant. However, we think that there's really a place for hydrogen buses. Also, as we said, there's a need to decarbonize the whole of public transportation, and some bus lines will be difficult to run on electric battery. So in the outlook that our European Frame Association, Hydrogen Europe, has done in February, they foresee a share for hydrogen buses of around 15% on city buses by 2035, and probably a bit higher share around 2025 by 2040. The potential is probably much higher for hydrogen on intercity coaches, a bit like for long-distance trucks. The sooner as the distances get longer, the potential for because you have a larger autonomy, larger range for the bus coaches, for the coaches. So for on the intercity travel, we think the share for hydrogen coaches will be higher than that.
Thank you so much. Now, just completing the picture, we talked about framework, we talked about business model, outlooks on the market. Make a quick technological break with René Schneider, who takes care of the ZF e-mobility platform for commercial vehicles, means trucks and heavy buses. So please just share with us which are the challenges ahead, the roadmap of your company.
Yes. Thanks, Ricardo. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to present you the ZF commercial vehicle e-drive platform, which I think addresses several topics we heard before. But I think in general, on the next slide, we need to have a look on the, let's say, entire commercial vehicle boundary conditions. On the right side, we see the market shares we expect roundabout until 2035. Let's first look at the bus market, which is the front runner. As we all know, in the city bus market, the transformation to e-mobility is already ongoing. But we also expect in the next years more market shares for intercity buses and also coaches. And then the volume driver here is also the truck market. Here, the decarbonization is just about to start. We have low volumes up to now, but we expect within the next 10 years a market share of around about 50%. But, and I think this is a message we can take with us here from today, this is all depending on some influencing factors. These are the social requirements, this is the battery technology, and as an alternative, the fuel cell technology. It depends on the development of the oil prices, and for sure this all has influence, including the capex we heard before, on the total cost of ownership. Especially for the coach and truck business, the range is important, and then also the charging infrastructure to run all these electric commercial vehicles. And this, combined with the legislative pressure, which is also sometimes changing, has influence on this evaluation. But in the end, one thing is clear, e-mobility will come. A little sooner, a little later, but in the end it will come, and this is what we need to address. And therefore, ZF developed the commercial vehicle eDrive platform, which I will now present to you. Let's go on the next slide. Perfect, thank you. Here on the top, you see a bunch of modular components. These are the most valuable components you need in an electric drivetrain. And to take two examples here, we see on the left side the e-motor, and the same e-motors goes in fact into 5, or no, one is missing here, into 6 products. We see on the lower left side our axle drives. We see in the middle our electric low floor axle, and on the right side we see our central drives. And as a second example, we have the inverter. The inverter is an integrated inverter in the axle drives and in the central drives. And as a variant, we created a frame-mounted inverter to run the X-Trax 2LF, our low-floor electric axle, and, which is not listed here, also Traxon 2 hybrid. And with this approach, we can address needed scalability and also a flexibility to address the entire commercial vehicle market for buses first, but then also for the trucks. But now let's have a look more into the details of the platform and the benefits which brings it for you as a customer. We have, let's say, some important characteristics all these modular components bring with them. And it's also important, you can just create this setup by pooling. You need to pool the volumes of these modular components to bring it into all these different applications in buses and trucks. So first important thing is the efficiency, which directly influences range, battery size. And here we have an e-motor, which is an oil-cooled, permanent magnetized synchron motor, and an inverter, which is based on 800 volt technology and silicon carbide electronics. And we have a transmission, which is a multi-speed transmission, which brings also the e-motor in a perfect operating range. Then we need to ensure compact design. This we can reach with an hairpin e-motor. The hairpin e-motor has a really big power density compared to earlier e-motors. And we have integrated the modular components. As mentioned before, we have the integrated inverters, but we have also an integrated e-actuation to shift the gears in the transmission. And we have also an integrated ECU, and these are all the same components all over the platform. Then we have also focus on comfort. Therefore, we have the multi-speed transmission, which lowers the speed of the e-motors. We have the power shift functionality available, and 800 volt technology, which shortens the charging times. And in the end, the robustness has also been mentioned before. We have an oil-cooled e-motor, not an water-cooled e-motor like previously. And this topic is really important for the manufacturers. We have one electronic interface. So we have one hardware electronic interface and also one software electronic interface for the entire platform. That means a manufacturer can build up a medium-duty electric vehicle, or let's say a small bus, take a smaller drive, and then and create based on this the electronic architecture, and then take over the same electronic architecture for his heavy-duty vehicle in case. This is a big advantage. And then in the end we have one software platform for the entire program here. And here you have also the benefit for software updates, new development, which can be rolled out in the entire platform. And now finally, let's summarize. We have here with our e-mobility platform a fully integrated approach for an optimal power and performance density in a small envelope. We have a modular design for full scalability between trucks, buses and coaches for medium duty and heavy duty applications, and also central drive to electrify vehicles and e-axles to build electric vehicles. We have integrated multi-speed transmission with a power shifting functionality. And finally, we have state-of-the-art components by pooling of volumes for an optimal system integration and also high efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We got very technical now. And in the next round, we will stay more on the evolution of the costs also of the platform and on the efficiency of the vehicle. Well, we have another 20 minutes, 25 minutes for a second round of the roundtable. Very effective round, I'd say. Let's start with Transdev, Katie Black. So we mentioned many times the topic of fundings, and we mentioned already the slowdown we see in the e-bus tenders in the first half of the year. For Italy and Germany, I looked at the data just a few days ago. It was really strong, the slowdown of e-bus tenders in the first half of this year. So I would like to ask, it's just a matter of fundings, or how could we get to a future less dependent on fundings? Are there any lever we could use for it, please?
Yeah, so I think we see the picture mixed. In some places, there is still a strong push for large electric fleets, but it's true that in other countries, the outlook looks a lot more challenging. And I think I have not heard anyone agree with the long-term picture. So we know that it's coming. We know that in theory, at some point, the TCO should add up. But I would echo what Bruno from Keolis said. At the moment, we don't see the TCO, or the total cost of ownership for electric buses, being comparable to a diesel bus. And so for us, we see the next few years as potentially a bit of a crunch period, where the regulation does not necessarily align with the available financing that's on the table. Because even when the TCO is there, the CapEx and OpEx are structured differently, and there's still a financing challenge at the beginning. So, yeah, there definitely is a challenge in front of us that we see for the next sort of 5 years or... And so I'd pull out a couple of things. I think firstly, in terms of the EU funding that is available, we would love to see a larger part of that be committed to public transport alongside shared mobility services and active travel. For example, when we look at the Social Climate Fund, where public transport is really relevant because, you know, it opens up access to transport for more vulnerable people in society. Between 2014 and 2020, only 1% of the transport infrastructure program was allocated to local public transport. So even just increasing that by a few percent in the next round could make a huge difference to the number of buses that we're able to put on the road and open up access to clean and affordable public transport. And then the second thing is the reality for us as operators is at the moment it's easier for us to put forward, you know, cost competitive bids sometimes with non-European bus brands. And there's a real and difficult trade-off for public transport authorities between keeping the costs down for their users and how much we want to support European industry. So there's currently no incentives for us at EU level in public procurement to work with European manufacturers. So again, I just leave that there as something that collectively we might want to think about. So lastly, yeah, there is a crunch period in front of us. We do agree that there's a bit of a risk in front of us where we need to align the ambition with and the regulations with the financial commitment and the supply chain. So I'm hoping we can all work together to find solutions to that.
Thank you so much. We would like to touch the topic of the energy mix. Okay, we're talking a lot about BEV buses. There are also fuel cell buses, of course, not to mention other low carbon, low emission solutions. So how do you think, Keolis, the energy mix looks like when opting eventually for fuel cell e-buses, depending on the region and other context?
Fuel cell is fantastic, potentially fantastic. And everything it's still a potential. We are running every day at Keolis 24,000 buses and coaches every day. 1,600 of them are electric battery, and 40 are hydrogen. And I think we are probably one of the global leaders running only 40 of them. So the figures speak themselves. But it's a huge potential, because each time battery doesn't make the job, and so far it doesn't make the job in many use cases, hydrogen and fuel cell is the only solution to provide the range we need. I have an example. It used to be a network operated by Keolis, Las Vegas, Nevada, in the US, and now it is Transdev now. In Las Vegas, Nevada, you have a peak hour at 2 a.m. At night, because this is the end of service for casinos, and there is a peak hour at 2 a.m. And because of that, the only way to electrify or to turn to zero emission the fleet in Las Vegas is hydrogen. You cannot do it with electric. Otherwise, you have to double the size of the fleet to do that. So it's much more expensive than hydrogen. So this is an example. I don't know if the project is going on. Maybe you will keep us in touch with that. So yes, hydrogen is interesting. So far, much more expensive, because not only of the assets, but because of the price of the molecule as well, as you know it very well. But from an operator point of view, it would be fantastic to be zero emission with a range of 300, 400. So yeah, it's a huge potential. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. And Iveco Bus. So we have been talking about manufacturing before. I have the feeling that manufacturing is just a part of a wider puzzle. So which are the main bottlenecks for European manufacturers to fulfill the targets, and how manufacturing fits into a wider puzzle, because it's assistance, services, infrastructure now. So please.
Yes, as I said, we consider now the vehicles are not the bottleneck. We are also increasing our portfolio, introducing this year the first fuel cell, by the way. So we are exhibiting here one BEV and one fuel cell electric bus, taking the first 2 orders for France with Cannes and Lorient. So there is a dynamic. There is a dynamic on the ecosystem. Again, there's a depot which needs to be converted, which needs to be fueled, whether it's with electricity, with gas, or with hydrogen. So it's one of the bottlenecks are the depot and the infrastructure conversion. The other one for the long run, and for Bruno, which will operate the vehicles in the next 20 years. So telematics,
25.
Data, 25. Okay, let's start at making a real committed 15 years, and then we will look at the 2025. But the data that is produced by our telematics system and that we share with the operators, with our telematics services Iveco on, is very important to go into the direction of predictive maintenance, to look after the state of health of the battery, to have a stronger reliability percentage. So this is key for the global increase of performance of the fleet, and not the vehicle. Again, it's a performance of the fleet. The second part, which in fact comes before, is the preparatory job that we do with all the electromobility services and solutions that we are also displaying here. We've got a great staff to do this job, to make, together with the operator, the PTAs, the operating predictions, the commitments on usage of the climate control of the vehicle. We know that heating up the vehicles is very demanding in winter. It's not so much with the fuel cell, because we can manage smartly the energy that is the heat from the fuel cell. But at the end of the day, having the vehicle, having the preparatory work, having the telematics, I think this is quite good material to sustain long life. And we are also, as an OEM, also manufacturing our batteries. We try to select the best cells on the market to give the longest warranties and durability, maintain the vehicle also with the batteries in a second life. And this is also something which we have been promoting and selling already, a second life of batteries for which it could become some zero-emission stationary power generation. And end of life is important. In my role of looking after sustainability, the end of life, the decommissioning, the recycling, we've got an agreement with BASF to collect, to transport appropriately the cells, the batteries that are defect, and to go into recycling. We do, for the sustainability life cycle assessment, like do the big operators, Transdev, Keolis, you do also yourself your assessment in view of the CSRD. We know the importance of doing this exercise. We know that as an OEM in Europe and also in France, with the electricity mix that we probably have the lowest, I would say, life cycle assessment for electric batteries in the market. This is also important to look at the global picture, not just bringing zero emission, but bring it in a very sustainable way.
Sounds perfect. Okay, we see there are some trends, in the market, and OEM are answering to these trends somehow. Okay, Iveco is launching also the fuel cell vehicles and services. What is European Mobility doing to keep the pace with the evolution of technology and the trends we see in Europe? For instance, the BRT, bus rapid transit system in Europe, we see it's quite a trend at the moment. Please.
Okay, well, we are glad to say that we have a very unique product, which is the IE tram, the bus that we have looking like a tram but on wheels. And you can see it there, by the way, if you didn't have the chance to see it yet. So our idea is continue evolving in this, to have something different to offer to the market. Is that vehicle is thought for mainly BRT projects, in which this gives this plus of this premium service to the citizens and in the cities, and we are launching new platforms, and then internally in the vehicles, no matter what product we speak about our portfolio, we need to continue investing and having state-of-the-art buses so that they can give the better experience to the users, with high connectivity, so that we can take data on real time, so that we can analyze the behavior of the performance and behavior of the vehicles and improve after that. And adapting also to the new regulations, as we all need to do recently with the GRS2 and the cybersecurity systems that we need to incorporate, to embed in our equipment. And then in our case, that we are not a big manufacturer, let's say so, we need to be very selective in the projects we want to go to, because we cannot afford to go to every tender that is published, and we need to be selective and go to those tenders in which we can give an added value that our customers, our PTAs or PTOs there are going to appreciate, and be competitive in that manner. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And not European Mobility, but within the group, you're also working on the fuel cell on long distance, on coaches. So that is something I used to get back to Jan-Erik Starlander on France Hydrogène. Which lever do you think should be paramount to allow faster adoption of fuel cell buses? Of course, cost of the hydrogen, I guess. What else?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think things are really accelerating now, and in Europe, the fleets are still very low, but in South Korea, you have already 1,000 buses running. During the Beijing Olympics, Winter Olympics in 2022, you had 800 buses to travel the athletes around. So yeah, the challenge is a bit like for electricity is infrastructure. But also the fact that it's not only the refueling stations, is that you have to reason in terms of ecosystem, hydrogen ecosystem, or we call them also valleys, that you have to time both the production to have the hydrogen available, transport it, store it, and distribute it through the refueling stations. So clearly the price of the molecule is paramount. There are strong targets that have been set at EU level and in most European countries. We need subsidy mechanisms. They are in place in an increasing number of countries. In Germany, they have a contract for difference mechanism with more than 4 billion euros, because there's also very large needs in industry. So you can't compare the cost of the hydrogen molecule today, when it's produced very small scale by a local electrolyzer of 1 megawatt, when you will have units around 30, 40 or more megawatts. The price will clearly go down. I think also regarding what you said, Kathy, about reindustrialization in Europe, I also would like to insist upon the fact that decarbonization has to go together with reindustrialization, and that we have the potential with the whole hydrogen value chain available in Europe, but we really have to foster that and not lose the battle, as we are unfortunately but losing it on the battery versus China. So really, there's still a need also for support on that, but the offer is now really available on the market. But it is also important that manufacturers themselves use European-made components.
Okay, I think this is something everybody's, of course, kind of agreeing, and I'll keep it from Mr. Dubolino in a while. But before this, with René Schneider, last contribution to the roundtable, I'd like to hear your take on the TCO topic, which was also something very, very common in the discussion. So from the point of view, something more than a component supplier. I think ZF is a little bit more than just a component supplier. Which is your take on TCO, how new platform, new advancement could allow it to decrease?
Yeah, I think the main topic which we also heard are the capex, and here the volume pooling I mentioned before is the key, and this we can just realize in combining for sure the volumes for the bus market with the volumes for the truck market, which are even higher, and here you get the main access to technologies which are really volume dependent, like especially the hairpin e-motors. That's tremendously volume dependent to be able to produce it economically. And with this is I think the main contribution, as well as for sure this the efficiency topic. There you can either reduce your battery size you need. The more efficient the drivetrain is, the smaller you can choose the battery in case of you know your range. Or for sure you have also lowered energy costs then in here. And yeah, for sure the robustness topic, like mentioned before, this is where we gain experience, and where we also, I think with this step we put in all experiences we got about the last 10 years to even raise the robustness and the durability of the components.
Thank you very much. We are in time. Okay, so thanks for your effectiveness. Thank you so much. Just calling back Mr. Dario Dubolino from DG Move for a final comments on. I heard a couple of topics. The topic of subsidies for, of course, European origin of components of buses, and the topic of revision of the regulation already in 2025. Maybe you have in mind others that have been discussed. Please.
Yeah, thank you. Indeed, there were quite a few topics. I think starting from, it's good to have reality checks with the operators. And I think it is good to see what are the concrete problems and what we can do better. Especially, and I would mention what Thomas was saying earlier, we are now going into the next multi-annual financial framework. So this is a really good time for stakeholders to inform the discussion what is needed now in terms of funding. Social Climate Fund, it does cover public transport. I take note, maybe we could do more on that. We do have funding on infrastructure. Again, maybe we can do more. This is something where I think in general, the message that, well, the TCO is getting better, but not there yet. Yes, that is something we need to take into account and look into how can we help bridge the gap. At the same time, I take some reassurance from the presentation from RaboBank, because I think it's quite clear the trend is there. We need to bridge a gap, but we will be getting there. And here maybe I would go back to the comment from Iveco on the regulation. First, I have to say the Clean Vehicles Directive already required zero emission. It also covered natural gas and biogas, but it had clear targets for zero emission. And I think what I take from this panel is it's very clear which way the market is going. We hear from OEMs, from operators, it's very clear we are going towards zero emission. I am not sure I would want to reopen that in a situation where, at least for the bus, for the urban bus sector, it's quite clear which way we are going. Hopefully, we'll get more hydrogen as well in the picture. At the moment, it's still a technology that is not at the same volume, but we are going towards zero emission overall. So, as a core message, I would say let's work together. And on the reindustrialization, I think if you look at the mandate letters for the commissioners, it's very clear that that is a key topic, industrial policy and competitiveness of European industries. And there is a clear indication that the Commission should look into public procurement rules and see how we can make them more favorable to European products and services. I don't think that's something that will be solved very quickly, but I think it is quite clear in the mandates. So there is work to do for sure, and it's very helpful to hear where are the concrete problems, but I think we're all going in the same direction. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Same direction, different perspective, of course. And on my side, it was very nice, very great to be here. Almost the major part of the chain represented, and I'm truly hope that in the audience, and thanks for the audience, thanks for attending this talk. Hope you will be going on with something interesting in mind. Hope it was an interesting session. Thank you so much for being part of it.